Group 16, the importance of trade specialization and comparative advantage between Mexico and U.S. Josue Jean, Jose Frago, Kevin Bolognesi, and Parker Dowling.
Here we have a brief description of Mexico. It is the 11th largest economy in the world. Its main language is Spanish, holds about a population of 129 million. And on the following slide, the U.S. Capital Washington, D.C. Official language is English.
Hi everyone, I'm Joshua Jean, one of the members of Group 16. So, introduction. Why nation trade? Why Mexico and US need to be trade? Nation trade to bring investment, raise employment, create economic of scale, stimulate competition between businesses, gain comparative advantage, and international trade plays a significant role in countries' economic growth. It is also an important determinant in raising living standard, providing employment, and enabling consumers to enjoy a greater variety of goods at lower costs. For example, because Mexico and US have different opportunity costs in what they produce, they both benefit from trade specialization as well as comparative advantage. Some of the benefits of specialization include greater economic efficiency, consumer benefit, and opportunities for growth for competitive sectors. So, with that, international trade between Mexico and US is crucial for both countries. To make trade easier, countries need to be agreed on certain things, and that brings us to trade agreement between US and Mexico. One of the most important trade agreements between these two countries is NAFTA. NAFTA eliminated most tariff on products traded between US and Mexico, with an important focus on liberalizing trade in agriculture, textile, and automobile manufacturing. NAFTA was being renegotiated because President Trump called it the worst trade deal ever made. This new agreement includes important change on cars and new policy on labor and environmental standard, intellectual properties protection, and some digital trade protection. US-Mexico economic relationship. In 2019, Mexico surpassed China as US top trading partner with $614.5 billion in dollars in total trade. Trade between Mexico and US more than tripled since NAFTA entered into force in 1994. Mexico's economy is closely linked to the US economy due to strong trade, investment, and economic ties between the two countries. For Mexico, a free trade agreement with US represents a way to lock in trade liberalization reform, attract greater flows of foreign investment, and spur economic growth. For US, NAFTA represents an opportunity to expand the growing export market to the south, but also represent a political opportunity to improve the relationship with Mexico.
Here we have a couple key economic indicators for both Mexico and the U.S., including a couple GDP calculations, its population, its imports, its exports, the percentage of the total GDP that is. Trade benefits both Mexico and the United States. Both of their economies grow as a result of them trading different goods and services. For example, the motor vehicle industry within the United States has expanded massively throughout North America due to the trade it has with Mexico. Mexico provides different types of goods and manufacturing things such as automotive, computers, electronics, appliances, different machinery that benefit and help the U.S. economy grow. And likewise, all the goods and services traded by the U.S. to Mexico help the Mexican economy grow as a result. Countries decide to specialize on the production of different goods and services due to who makes them at a lower opportunity cost, meaning that whichever country is able to produce a good at a lower opportunity cost, they will specialize in the production of that good and trade for another good. Comparative advantage simply means which country can produce a good or service at a lower opportunity cost than the other country. For example, the United States is able to produce agricultural goods at a much lower opportunity cost than Mexico can produce them. Therefore, it would make sense for the U.S. to specialize in these agricultural goods and trade them instead for manufacturing machinery coming from Mexico that they can produce at a lower opportunity cost. Therefore, when we talk about a trade between two countries, there will always be one country with a comparative advantage in one thing and another country with a comparative advantage of a different good or service, meaning not one country can have a comparative advantage in producing both goods that are being traded for.
Gains from trade. Both Mexico and the U.S. benefit from trade by importing and exporting goods. U.S. exports items that they have a comparative advantage in producing, and imports from Mexico what Mexico has a comparative advantage in producing. U.S. trade with Mexico has been increasing over the years. The U.S. imports more goods from Mexico than they export to Mexico. Terms of trade. The terms of trade refer to the relative price to import and export goods from one country into another, and a ratio of import to export prices. Considering both comparative advantage and opportunity costs are essential to finding mutually beneficial terms of trade for both countries. Terms of trade between the U.S. and Mexico are outlined in the North American Free Trade Agreement. Effects of trade. Trade between Mexico and the U.S. allows for both countries to have economic gain. Total trade between the U.S. and Mexico totaled $671.1 billion in 2018. Trade between nations allows for outside investment into the country. The U.S. imports around $80 billion more than it can export to Mexico. Trade helps local economies of border states, such as Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
Tariffs are restrictions on trade between two countries in the form of a tax on imported goods. These are placed in order to promote production of goods inside a country. Meanwhile, quotas are goods imported from different countries that don't have tariffs placed on them. The U.S. and Mexico are currently in a dispute over tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum. The U.S. wants to impose a 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum imports.
Intellectual property rights. An efficient free market relies on strong intellectual property rights. These rights are given to persons over the creations of their minds. Property rights ensure the owner is worry-free with the status of their property as it is protected under our legal system. Patents, utility models, trade secrets, slogans, copyrights, and trademarks are all examples of intellectual property rights designed to ensure the creations of people or companies are protected by the legal system for a set amount of time. NAFTA protects all citizens living in North America from people stealing or using your intellectual property without your consent. Mexico, however, is very limited with its protection of patents for individuals. Basically, Mexico does not allow ideas to be patented. It must be a physical object that can change the way people interact with the real world. Summary and conclusions. NAFTA is the main trade agreement between Mexico, United States, and Canada. It was introduced in 1994. President Trump renegotiated NAFTA and said it was the worst trade deal ever made. Mexico surpassed China as the number one trading partner with the U.S. with $614.5 billion in total trade in 2019. Trade between Mexico and the U.S. more than tripled since NAFTA entered into effect in 1994. Mexico and the U.S. trade with each other to boost their economies by taking advantage of NAFTA and its benefits. U.S. exports products they have a comparative advantage with and imports what Mexico has a comparative advantage with. The U.S. and Mexico have a very solid foundation for international trade under NAFTA and will continue to benefit from each other. NAFTA includes important changes on cars, new policies on labor and the environmental standards, intellectual property protections, and some digital trade protections.